Whenever someone says you can only achieve a pro vocal mix with either only hardware or paid plugins, my response is always this. If you can't explore, learn, and make the most with the free plugins you already have at your disposal, you still won't get any significant results out of the paid ones. Stick around, let me show you how I took a rap vocal that sounded like this.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring, banging in your speakers like it was the second coming,
and turned it to sound like this with just completely free plugins on a 2-track beat in FL Studio.
It's time we step it up, the competition not enough. I'm tired of these lollipop rappers who talk tough.
Yo guys, I'm BiiMan and you're welcome to the video. Let's get straight into how I process this rap vocal. So guys, the first thing I'm going to mention is that on the master chain, I already have some processing going on, and every effect on the master chain is actually still also a free plugin. We'll come to that at the end of the vocal chain. First, this is the instrumental we're working with. As you would expect with most 2-track instrumental, they come already mastered. So the first thing I did was I used a trim tool on this instrumental and I reduced the gain by minus 4.8 dB. This has it peaking just slightly above 6 dB. My intention is when I combine this reduced instrumental with the vocals, I should have everything peaking at least around -3 dB. So I still do some extra processing on the mastering chain to glue everything together while peaking just slightly below 0 dB. That being said guys, let's get straight to the vocal. I'm going to explain what each mixer track does and how everything adds up to the sound of the processed vocal. Starting from the left to the right, first we have the vocal bus here. This is the main bus where everything about the vocal is routed to. It just holds the vocal and every other effect associated with the vocal and is routed directly into the master track. So after this vocal bus, I have the effects bus. This second bus contains all the time-based effects associated with the vocals. This includes reverbs and delays. And the effect bus is also routed to the vocal bus, which is routed to the master track. So after the effect bus, I have the Vox sub. This is a sub bus with its own processing that is also routed into the main vocal bus, which is routed into the master track. After the vocal sub bus, I have the rap vocal mix bus. This is where the main processing on the rap vocal is being done. And this rap vocal mix bus is routed into the vocal sub bus, which is routed into the vocal bus, which is routed into the master. From this rap vox mix bus, I routed the signal coming out of this mix bus into the time-based effects like reverbs and delays. We're going to come to that later. So, after the rap vox bus, I then have the main audio track for the rap vocal. This is the main mixer track where this rap vocal is routed into. This is where the vocal processing actually starts, and these are the effects I have on it. First, I have a pitcher. This is a free vocal tuning plugin in FL Studio. You would consider this an alternative to your auto-tune and it works just fantastic. On this pitcher, I turned the source into a male vocal right here. I selected the key over here, which happened to be A minor. Then I kept the speed as slow and the fine tuning as 0. This is what it sounds like with the pitcher, first without.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring, banging in your speakers like it was the second coming.
And with.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring, banging in your speakers like it was the second coming.
It gives the vocal that first level of sweetening. Then after the pitcher, I have this first free parametric EQ tool in FL Studio. On this EQ guys, I'm not doing much, just high passing the low end around 120 Hz.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring, banging in your speakers like it was the second coming.
After the EQ guys, I have this free preamp from Universal Audio. I use this to add harmonic and sonic texture into the rap vocal before getting it properly processed. So as you can see on this leveler here, I increased it a lot and then I reduced the output. This big leveler knob here actually increases the harmonic character we get off this preamp. And over here, at the high end of the preamp, at 7 kHz, I reduced it by 1.5 dB. The rest of the effect stays the same. This is how everything sounds like with the pitcher, the EQ, and the preamp.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring, banging in your speakers like it was the second coming.
So guys, after the preamp, we're actually done with this main track that contains the rap vocal. Now moving back to the left, we move into the first burst track where the real processing starts happening, the rap vox mix. Now guys, on this track, the first thing I did was I used this free Fruity multiband compressor. This is actually the one tool that shaped the vocal the most. You can see it's divided into 3 bands, the low band, the mid band, and the high band. If you come over here, you can shape the cutoff frequency of the low band, the mid band, and the high band. As you can see, if I click on this knob, you see this square box over here. This lets me decide how high the low band gets, the mid band, and eventually the high band. Something you should also know about FL Studio is, whenever you hover across any feature, you want to check right up here at the top left of FL Studio, you would actually get more information about what you're dealing with. So as you can see, when I hover down here at the low band, and you observe at the very top, it's telling me we are somewhere around 688 Hz. So I can push it even more, you see. If you can notice here, this red is telling you how much compression we're doing. So on this low band, I used a ratio of 4:1, a soft knee, a fast attack of 10 milliseconds, a slow release of 250 milliseconds, and a gain of +2 dB. You can tell these numbers, as I earlier said, by observing over here. You see, the reason I decided to use a slightly higher release on the low end was because I wanted it to really compress and hold the low end. So this is bypass.
Culture steady snoring, banging in your speakers like he was the second coming.
And this is with it.
We step it up, the competition not enough. I'm tired of these lollipop rappers who talk tough.
On the mid band, I choose the cutoff frequency around 355 Hz, right up to 4,700 Hz.
It's time we step it up, the competition
So this is it over
not
here.
enough. I'm tired of these lollipop rappers who talk tough.
I use a ratio of 3:1. I used a hard snare because I really wanted to clamp the mid frequency. I used a fast attack and I used a fast release. Remember, I used a slightly slower release on the low band, but on the mid band, I used a fast release. And I kept the gain at +2 dB. This is bypassed.
Game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging
And
in
this
your
is with
speakers
it.
like he was the second coming. It's time we step it up, the competition not enough.
Now on the high band, I used a ratio of 2:1. The hard knee. I used a slightly slower attack as compared to the mid and the low band, and then I used a fast release. The reason I did this is because I want the compressor to quickly release when it compresses the high band, and then I kept the gain at +5 dB. This actually makes the high band stand out. Now this is what it sounds like first without.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like he was the second coming.
And with.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like he was the second coming. The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like he was the second coming.
So that was it for this free multiband compressor, guys. After that, I used the Maximus. On the Maximus, I use this strictly for the de-esser control. So when you come here on the Maximus, it actually gives you a de-esser preset. You have a de-esser narrow band and a de-esser split band. You see, if you select these bands here, it actually shows you the frequency you want to de-ease. You can change the frequency by pushing here or here. When you increase here, it removes the low frequency from the intended mid frequency that you want to de-ease. You can also reduce how much high you don't need on the de-esser band. And over here, it works some sort of like a compressor. You can set the threshold where you want de-easing to start happening. If you select this monitor here, you can actually see how much de-easing is happening.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like he was the second coming.
So after that, guys, the third processing I used was all of these free plugins you get with the Slate Digital Mixer Rack. First, I used this compressor, the Monster. Now, as you can remember, on our first multiband compressor, we compress just particular frequency bands, but on this compressor, we are compressing the whole frequency range. This is what it sounds like first without the Monster.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like he was the second coming. It's time we step it up, the competition not enough. I'm tired of these lollipop rappers who talk tough.
So after the compressor, I also used the Reviver. The Reviver has just 2 knobs, the thickness knob and the shimmer knob. I used a bit of the thickness knob, which actually adds more body into the vocal. and a bit of the shimmer, which is like some sort of an exciter. It adds a bit of mid and high end. Now this is what it sounds like.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like it was the second coming. It's time we step it up, the competition not enough. I'm tired of these lollipop rappers who talk tough.
And you can observe that this gives us more signal boost. So then I used this trimmer tool and attenuated the volume by -3 dB. So this is what it sounds like. First without the slate digital rack.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like it was the second coming.
And with it.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like it was the second coming. It's time we step it up, the competition not enough. I'm tired of these lollipop rappers who talk tough.
So guys, that was it for the main processing of the vocal. And as you can see from here, the vocal gets routed into this vocal sub-bus. We're going to come back to this vocal sub-bus after. Let's talk about the parallel processing. So actually before sending the vocal into this bus where we just finished explaining, I actually sent it into this parallel compression bus. So on this parallel compression bus, guys, I used the Pulsar Smasher, which is also a free tool to compress this vocal on parallel mode. I already made a video on the Pulsar Smasher, guys. You should check it somewhere up here. And then I reduced the volume of the parallel compressor to test somewhere down here around 50%. This is what the vocal sounds like together with the effects we've discussed so far and parallel compression.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like it was the second coming.
You can hear we just added this extra punch and weight into the vocal. So back into the rap vocal mix, I then routed from this track first into this room bus. This is where I put the vocal in its room, sort of like early reflections. So on this channel, first I used an EQ, I cut the low and I cut some of the high, and I have this dip here around 2000 Hz. And on the room, I used this Fruity Reverb tool from FL Studio. What I did with this free Fruity Reverb is, I removed all of the dry, I kept the mix at 100, and I increased the early reflections just slightly. I did a bit of high cut and low cut too. I didn't use no decay. This is what gives it that room feeling.
Don't get it twisted, I'm still trapping and doing drills. Circadian rhythm is militant, red or blue pill.
Now after the room, I also routed the signal coming from this rap vocal mix into the slap delay. Now on the slap delay, let me increase the volume. I use the Fruity Delay 3, and this is what it sounds like.
Don't get it twisted, I'm still trapping and doing drills. Circadian rhythm is militant, red or blue pill.
So after the Fruity Delay 3, I used the Vintage Chorus, which also comes with FL Studio. This is to give the slap delay some sort of chorus and weed. It sounds like this.
Don't get it twisted, I'm still trapping and doing drills. Circadian rhythm is militant, red or blue pill.
After that, I then used an EQ to cut out a bit of the low and the high.
Don't get it twisted, I'm still trapping and doing drills. Circadian rhythm is militant, red or blue pill. Beyond celebrating its double entendres, but the flock is so dumb that I'm saying that to the public.
After the slap delay, I also routed the vocal into the reverb. And on the reverb, I removed completely the dry and the early reflections, kept the mid at 100%, a bit of the decay. I used an EQ after that to cut off some low end. And then I used a Fruity limiter for sidechain docking. So first, this is the vocal with the reverb.
Circadian rhythm is militant, red or blue pill. Beyond celebrating its double entendre.
So how I set this up was, instead of using the limit, I used the compressor. And then I come over here on this sidechain and select the rap vox mix. I then use the threshold, the nay, the attack and the release to determine how much docking is happening. Now observe what happens.
Don't get it twisted, I'm still trapping and doing drills. Circadian rhythm is militant, red or blue.
So that was it for all the parallel processing, guys. Now let's continue into this vocal subgroup. So right after the vocal mix bus, which has its signal routed into this parallel processing, I then routed the signal coming out of this vocal mix bus into this vocal subgroup. Now on this vocal subgroup, I did just one thing. I used Lofty Crosshair, a free and very versatile EQ. It's actually an emulation of the Mac EQ. I reduced 160 Hz out of the vocal by 2 dB, and this is what it sounds like.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like it was the second coming. It's time we step it up, the competition not enough.
So the vocal sub bus gets routed into this main and final vocal bus, which gets routed into the master track. So that was basically all the processing for this lead vocal, guys, with completely 100% free tools. So as you can see, guys, after all the processing on the vocal in combination with the instrumental, we were picking here around -3 dB, which leads us into the mastering chain. And on the mastering chain, first I used the EQ. I cut off the low around 20 Hz and the high. I'm not sure why I cut the high, but anyways, I did it. I also then used the free lofty cuts, and as you can see, it has the mastering option. When you enable this mastering mode, the EQ changes. So on the EQ, I did just two things. I removed around 5 dB from 160 Hz and I increased 1 dB around 20 kHz. After that, I used Maximus. I compressed a bit of the low end, the mid to the high untouched. After that, I then used Emphasis, the free limiter that comes with FL Studio. I did only 3 things with this Emphasis. On the output, I kept it at -0.6. I selected the transient algorithm and then I pushed the input by +6 dB. And this is what everything sounds like.
The game is getting boring, why the culture steady snoring? Banging in your speakers like it was the second coming. It's time we step it up, the competition not enough. I'm tired of these lollipop rappers who talk tough.
So that's it for today, guys. If you're interested in this template, let me know in the comment section. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.